Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, Marine Corps veteran and host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff here at the Texas Veterans Land Board. On the Next Gen Warrior Show, we are proud to promote the continued leadership and service of the military as well as veterans community here across the great state of Texas and around the nation. Joining me today from Dallas, Texas is Patrick George. He is the managing partner of Beachwood Ventures, a venture capital firm, as well as an advisory firm that he founded. Patrick, it's great to have you on the program today. How are you?
I'm good, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we get into your career in finance and your career in business and the many lessons that you have learned, tell us a little bit about your military service.
Sure. So joined in 2005. Into the Marine Corps and right out of the University of Texas, and am an infantry officer going into my 15th year. Served on active duty 2006, 2010, platoon commander in 08 in Haditha, and then in 2009 I was an operations officer for a border transition team controlling the Jordanian and half the Syrian border. And then transitioned to the reserves and was a recon company commander, which is one of the best experiences someone can ask for in the Marine Corps, and currently serving as a major with a unit called Reserve Support Platoon.
So I'm interested to know the transition of skills, the transition of experience. It can be hard skills, it can be soft skills, it can be technical skills through the work that you do now at Beachwood Ventures, as well as the work that you've done in business and finance. What do you think, or how do you think your military service supported your career?
It's a great question because I think a lot of veterans struggle with this. Going into my 15th year, I've had the opportunity to be on both the active duty and the reserve side. And so one thing that I always find is that my counterparts on the active duty side still are concerned about how their skills are going to translate into the civilian world, and it can be scary, and I can understand that. I've been there. And so, but what I try to encourage my brothers and sisters is that the skills that we develop in the military far surpass a lot of the skills that you learn in the civilian world, and you just have to be thoughtful about how that translates.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm interested to know, like at least from intangible skills, right? You talk about intangible skills in the military, the ability to work under pressure, the ability to work well in a team, the ability to take orders and carry out those orders. How though, from maybe a leadership perspective, has your time as an officer helped you either grow companies or evaluate companies?
Sure. So think about what we do as leaders in the military. You're running teams, you're training, you're delegating, you're issuing orders, you're putting a lot of trust and confidence in your team, but you're making sure they're set up for success. As a leader, I always say that my responsibility is to ensure my team is set up for success, and any failure is a leadership failure. And so I don't think a lot of leaders in the civilian community today truly embrace that level of leadership. And Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, calls it the fifth level of leadership. And so when you look through a window, when things go right, it's your team. And when things go wrong, you look in a mirror. As the old saying goes, players win, coaches lose. And so I think you need to take that attitude in leadership. The other big, I think, something I learned at a very young age, my father always said, is the biggest mistakes leaders make is their inability to make decisions. And they always want to get the 100% solution. They always want 100% of the information. And we all know that that never happens.
Right.
And I think veterans have a unique experience because they're thrown into responsibilities that require decisions to be made in a very high stress, high risk environment, combat, where they're never going to have all the information. In fact, you usually have a lot less information than normal. So you need to be comfortable with the 80% solution today versus the 100% solution when it's too late. And I think the military really trains people in that mentality earlier in their career.
You mentioned something in the intro there that I think I experienced. So I enlisted around the same time you joined. I enlisted in 2005. I got out in '09. Kind of fell on my fell on my face at Blinn, trying to get into Texas A&M. Decided to join Alpha Company 123 out of the Houston area. Deployed with them and came back here to Austin. The second time I got out, I had a better understanding of what I wanted to do and who I wanted to become. But the conversation that you alluded to about talking with the guys and gals who are on active duty and they're tentative about getting out because they're unsure about what to do. Did you experience that? And how did you overcome that once you started to push into your professional career?
Absolutely. I was incredibly nervous. I personally do not believe the transition out of the military, the training you get for that when I was getting out is was very thorough.
Yeah.
And so I was very lucky, I was very fortunate. I had the opportunity to go to an incredible graduate program at Cornell and receive my MBA. And I really leveraged those 2 years to help me figure out what are my skills, how do they apply to the civilian community, and what am I passionate about. And so I was very lucky to have that 2 year program to help me make that transition. But it is a scary scenario. And so what I try to do is encourage people to get involved in organizations like Allies in Service here in Dallas with Roger Staubach, who we have individuals that are dedicating and volunteering their time to helping these active duty or even those in the reserves, anybody that's transitioning, that's looking for that next career move, we're here to help you. And so I would encourage people to take advantage of those opportunities, and be humble enough to recognize that we all need a little bit of help sometimes.
Right.
And I wanted, just like when we train, we rehearse, we rehearse, we rehearse. Well, you need to be practicing how you're presenting your skill sets. You need to be practicing your pitch. You need to be, talking and networking with individuals. And so the more you can get involved in those organizations, I think people will become more comfortable with taking that leap of faith.
Yeah. My although it's obviously a little bit different, my, I guess, transition moment was through the University of Texas here in Austin, and it was an up and down path, right? Because there were some days, and maybe you experienced this when you were getting your MBA, that you get out and you go, oh man, I can do what I want. The world, it opens up so many different doors, right? Especially when you're a young man or a young woman, and your day to day is very defined by the Marine Corps. Once you
Mhm.
get onto a college campus, you could just as soon take a left and go and talk with the math people or the science people. You could take a right and run into the athletes, and you could keep going, forward and run into the liberal arts and the government people. And part of that I loved, and I kind of want to know what you either enjoyed about that, or the other side of it for me, which was very difficult, was I felt like I was on my own for the first time, right? I was like, there's no net here to catch me, right? It's not like my sergeant's not going to pick me up and keep pushing me forward in line. No one's going to be yelling at me to get up in the morning. How did you manage the lifestyle of your MBA program after transitioning off of active duty?
Yeah, that's a great point. You do have a lot of freedom, and you really, as I'll never forget something my executive officer, Battalion XO at 3-4 once told me when I was applying to join MARSOC.
Hmm.
He said, listen, no one's going to care about your career more than you. And so you really have to take the reins and make decisions and think about what it is you want and go after it. And so in the end, and this comes to the way I hire, I always will prefer somebody I have to pull the reins on than I have to crack the whip.
Right.
And so as you think about what it is you want to do, you got to take that same discipline that you have being a military service member and apply it and think, I want to be the best professional I can be. So when I got off active duty and I was studying for the GMAT and I was looking at going to law school, so I was studying for the LSAT, I treated it as a profession. I was up early in the morning. I worked all day. I had a schedule. I included fitness. I think that's incredibly important. I made sure I allocated time for networking. To your point about no safety net, you need to be reaching out to the veteran network, because trust me, we are here to help you. We want to be helpful because we have been in that position and we know how scary it can be. And we want, and it's now being on this side of the coin for 10 years.
Yep.
It is very easy for me to reach out and provide that help and make introductions and give guidance and allow someone to ask the dumb questions, because there are dumb questions and you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of somebody that could be a potential employer.
Mm-hmm.
So come to me and ask the dumb questions, and I will give you the honest feedback. And there's a whole network out there that'll do that for you. And I leverage that. When I was at grad school, the only reason I got an internship at Morgan Stanley outside of coming from a top-notch business school was the veteran network at Morgan Stanley. Because Morgan Stanley did not recruit from Cornell at that time. The veterans grabbed me by the horse collar and brought me into that organization. And I owe that first job to the veteran network. And so I would tell people, you need to leverage that.
I want to, second that for a minute. And, for those in the audience who are listening to this conversation, this is to me, the pairing that what you just described is the perfect pairing of technical skills and soft skills. The technical skills are the LSAT, the GMAT, getting up, taking your courses, learning the technical skills that it takes to get hired at a Morgan Stanley. But the second part, and I think this may impact maybe a little bit more of the enlisted side than the officer side, but something that I've seen so many enlisted folks come out of the service without is a professional network. And the fact that you hit on that, the desire to get out and go meet people and learn what their interests are, learn where they go to dinner, learn what their career path is going to be, and start building up those soft skills, that really does become your social safety net almost after you get out. Because look, you're no longer walking down the street with body armor on, a Kevlar, a rifle, and your best friends next to you. You have to figure out how to develop that new social network that can keep you up. And like you said, pull you by, your collar and say, hey man, you're coming with us. We're going to go take you to this job interview. We're going to introduce you to the people that can help you make you successful on the other side of wearing the uniform. I want to ask you about this though, if you don't mind me pivoting for a little bit. You have founded your own firm, and I said it at the top, but I'll say it again. It's Beachwood Ventures. Can you tell us about why venture capital is something that you pursue, why it is something you enjoy, and why it makes you kind of get out of bed in the morning and say, hey, I'm excited to go about this every day?
Yeah, Dan, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I love building businesses, working with teams. It reminds me a lot of being, as a platoon commander and company commander and working with a great, passionate, talented group of individuals. And so as soon as I transitioned into finance out of business school and started with investment banking, because I wanted to build some credibility, some additional acumen and really learn the ropes and expand my network. I co-founded a company called Accelerate Resources, and we built a fairly large investment firm that specialized in oil and gas out in West Texas, which is where my family is from. Been in oil and gas for over 100 years. And that was probably one of the best educational experiences and business experiences I could have ever asked for, which was starting my own company with a great business partner right here at my dining room table in this house. And we built that over the last 5 years, and it's still going strong. But that experience showed me, one, what the military taught me as far as how to be a leader and how to run an organization, I did not fully appreciate until I was in that position, where in the end, going back to the days of the basic school, what now, Lieutenant, right? Like I'm now in that seat again. And in the end, I've got to make the call. And so I loved it. And being able to recruit and build an elite team and see that team succeed, and learning how to delegate and knowing how to transition from being just a small company where it's, you're doing everything, to go into a 30+ person company and you're having to delegate, that's a hard transition for entrepreneurs to make, but the military teaches you how to do that. I really love that aspect of business, and I still love being, a C-suite type executive at corporations or businesses, especially the startups, because I feel like that's where they need. You got a passionate founder, a great idea, but they're really pigeonholed, or they're a mile deep but only an inch wide, and they need help on that more generalist, be a mile wide. And that's where I think I've been able to add a lot of value, because in the military we learned so many skills, whether it's operations, logistics, human resources. We learn all that. And a lot of veterans don't know that they're learning those things, which is a part of what I try to help people when they try to tell their story. They're actually developing all these skills. And so the reason I started Beachwood is because I started, one, seeing a lot of opportunities to direct invest in great companies with great management teams that are just off market, smaller deals. I said, why am I not taking advantage of this? And I've got a lot of friends that want to be in these types of deals. So I started putting deals together, and it was just fun. Doing deals with your friends was just fun. And so I started putting them together. I said, okay. After I did about, half a dozen of these, I was like, wow, this is not only fun, it's lucrative, and I'm good at it. And so I started to build that up. And then along the way, I started getting asked to be on advisory boards, and helping these teams, especially that are trying to enter oil and gas, because I had that background. I said, wow, I get to do what I did in the Marine Corps, which is, teach and mentor young Marines. I now get to help advise and be a part of these amazing elite teams that are so passionate about what they're doing, which I feed off of that energy. And I think I can bring value to the table because of the background that I have with not only being a founder of my own company myself, but also the operational skills and logistics that I learned from the military. So I love being an advisor too. And the best is when I can combine both of those and be an investor and a board member or an advisor to help grow the business.
Can I ask you about the hiring process? Because you mentioned just a minute ago about you start this company with one person, your best friend at your dining room table, and you grow it to around 30 people. So you have spent the time and as a small business, making sure that you have, at least from an outside perspective, I would think it would be very critical to make sure that the core people who come in to start the business, to create the foundation, either match your skill set, but are able to set the appropriate culture within the business, that it's able to scale and grow in a healthy way. When you were sitting down at the table and you were talking to somebody that you might be interested in hiring, if that person was a veteran and they had maybe just gotten off active duty, or maybe they were just finishing up their degree, maybe they just gotten done with an associate's, and they walk into your office, what are some things or maybe some advice that you would impart to them before they start their career, or if they're just beginning their career?
Yeah, I love helping veterans in that position. And that's why I work with allies in service, is to give that guidance. Because I will tell you, the one thing I think veterans screw up the most, and me included, was when I got off active duty and I got into an interview with a potential corporation or business or whoever. I'd rattle off everything in chronological order. I would talk in acronyms, and I just fly through it, and it's just very military-esque. And you can just tell that the person on the other side, it's just like right over their head, eyes glaze over, and they're like, hey, that was great. Thank you for your service. And so, you really need to practice with civilians, by the way, and because they will ask you like, hey, I don't know what that means. Explain to me why that matters. I know it sounded cool and maybe it was a big deal in the military, but I have no clue how to translate that to this job. And so I think people get really stuck in just explaining what they did versus explaining the value that they can bring to a business. And so it's important to tell a story, not just regurgitate a resume that's boring. You want to be interesting. And so tell a story, be able to explain what you did in the military, but in a way that civilians understand. And ideally, explain it in a way that shows the person on the other side of the table what value you're going to bring to their organization. So obviously that requires some research on the front end, understand what that business does, and try to connect the dots between what they do and what you did and why you believe you can add value. And then on top of that, always come in incredibly humble, obviously willing to do and start anywhere. Don't have this attitude where, well, I was a company commander or a staff sergeant, gunnery sergeant leading a platoon, or I was like I said, company commander, and I expect to have a lateral transfer into your organization. It's not how it works. If a civilian showed up to the Marine Corps after being a vice president of an investment banking firm and then showed up and was like, hey, I want to be a company commander. I mean, you'd laugh at that guy, right? Or that person. And so, you just got to be humble. And I'll give you a personal experience. I graduated from Cornell, a great business school, on the top in the country. All my friends were getting jobs at these top investment banking firms, but I really wanted to be at a firm in Dallas because I wanted to get back to Texas and I wanted to do something very specific. And there was only 2 opportunities really for me. And there was the one firm that I wanted to be at the most, where I started. All they had was a role for an analyst. An analyst is, in our industry, is someone that's like 2 or 3 years out of college, has 2 or 3 years of investment banking experience at a bulge bracket bank. And they're coming in at the bottom of the barrel, right? Like entry level. And all my friends were coming up higher with 50% higher salaries, more responsibility, all this jazz. I didn't care. I said, no, I'll do it. And I took a lower pay, bottom, entry level position, even though he'd say, "You like, you sure you want to do this? Like, you're way overqualified for this job." And I was like, I don't care. I want in. There's one great piece of advice I got from a managing director from Morgan Stanley was just get in. Just get into the industry. It's a lot easier to move around once you're in. And so that's what I did. I took the opportunity, took the pay cut. I didn't care. And I kicked the door in, showed my value, my worth, learned as much as I could. And then I climbed really quickly. And this is what I try to explain to veterans is, to your point, we have these skills that that will make you a better leader in an organization. You just got to go spend a little bit of time, be humble, and go spend a little bit of time learning the acumen and learning the ropes. And then your soft skills, your leadership skills, all the things that you did in the military will catapult you above your peers very quickly. There'll be this tipping point, to steal a Malcolm Gladwell. There'll be this tipping point where you jump to the top ahead of your peers very quickly.
I'm glad you said that, because that's actually a conversation that we haven't had for a while, but it's one that I have heard from veterans, and I can, to some degree, I can relate to, because I have so much appreciation for the Clements Center for National Security at the University of Texas, and Dr. William Bowden, Dr. Paul Miller. There was a summer, right? And I was probably 24, 25, I guess. I had been on campus here in Austin I'd been in Austin for a couple of years. I had been on campus for maybe a year or two. And after serving 5 years in the Marine Corps, I was at the White House Communications Agency. I had incredible experiences, but I was kind of feeling what you just talked about, but I didn't know that was part of the route. I didn't know that you might get out of the military, instead of, like you said, doing that parallel lat move, you may actually have to dip down. I went to, and I am so grateful for this opportunity. I went to the Clements Center for National Security at the University of Texas and asked to volunteer. And I said, you guys don't even have to pay me. I just want to be here and I want to learn from you. And I did everything. I moved water jugs. I helped print stuff. I folded stuff, stapled stuff. It was just about being in the room, but it was a little difficult, right? Because you expect, I love the alternate reality that you talked about. You wouldn't have a VP of a big finance firm or investment bank all of a sudden go be a company commander in the Marine Corps. They have to go through boot camp, or they have to go through OCS. They have to earn their stripes. And it's the same thing for us here. I didn't expect that. But while I was having that experience, it was incredibly, I think, cathartic for me. It was enjoyable, and it took a little bit of time. But because, just like you said, you were willing to kind of just take what's available to get in the door, it allows you to grow from there. And you can't lose sight of, like, I will continue to grow even if I have to take a step or two down with a couple years after the military.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something that is one of my ethos is the quickest way to get shown the door, in my opinion, is to say something along the lines of, that's not my job. I'll never want to, that mentality I have no patience for it. I still do when I was building Accelerate, you would find me in the kitchen doing the dishes. You would find me taking out the trash. I do whatever it takes to make the business successful. And so what I encourage people to do is when I first got my first, when I moved back to Dallas and I started working at Energy Spectrum Advisors, I went around to every vice president and I said, what can I do to take off your plate to make your life easier so you can focus on growing our business? I took on marketing. I took on FINRA compliance. I took on the IT, by the way, one of the most frustrating things ever. I literally did the company website. Say again?
I said that was maybe a bridge too far, huh? You're like, I'm gonna have to give this one back to you, actually.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to touch this one. But you start doing that. One, everybody knows you as a team player. Two, you learn a lot about what it takes to run a business. Everybody thinks running a business is just doing what it is you're trying to do, build a widget. People don't realize how much goes into running, like all the things that go into a company, whether it's the insurance, the office, the internet, human resources, like all this other stuff. It's like 50% of building a company, and people just like don't even think about it. And again, this is where I try to add a lot of value to these founders, is because they get into it and they're like, I don't even want to deal with that. I just want to focus on what I'm passionate about and my product. But they don't realize that, well, it's those things that are actually necessary and going to require you. It's required in order to be successful. And so, so by going in and taking all these little things off my VP's plate, one, you become indispensable, because trust me, they don't want to take that stuff back. And two, you learn a tremendous amount, and you get to be a part of more things. They start grabbing you, and they're saying, hey, join me for this conversation, or hey, Patrick, join me to go take this guy to lunch, because you're engaged more with senior leadership. And that's just being top of mind, right? It's like, hey, you're in their offices, you're taking things off, you're talking to them about things outside of just doing your day-to-day job. And so to that point, carry water jugs, volunteer, do whatever it takes. Persistence and being hungry is another great way to get in the door. They might not be hiring. They might say, man, look, you don't have the skill set and I've got to train you. But if you come in there and you say, look, I'll work for free, or I'll work for $500. I just need some money to help pay my rent, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll be here 12 hours a day. I don't care. That is a great way to get in the door, because in the end, what are you doing? You're de-risking it for the employer. And you're like, okay, you're not really costing me much. I really don't, I'll give you some training for less salary. It actually is a value proposition now to the employer.
Right.
And you will quickly climb the ladder if you come in with that type of humbleness and work ethic. You'll be surprised how far it can take you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So you're in investment banking, you're starting Accelerate. Did you have in the back of your mind, are you having the discussion either with yourself or with your family members or friends about starting your own firm? And what got you to the point of saying, okay, Beachwood Ventures, this is going to be what I'm going to, for lack of a better, I'm going to put my chips in on this. This is really where I'm headed, and I want to make this successful now.
After building Accelerate, and I advanced as a business executive significantly in that 5-year period. I feel like I got 15 years of management experience in 5. And, and my, partner my business partner would say that, he being the third party looking in, he even talked to me about how much I grew as a business professional. And so I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And it wasn't until I really got into a comfortable rhythm and I took a step back and I said, wow, I can do this. Like, I'm actually pretty good at this. And then with the active deal flow and people asking me, when people started asking me to advise their company, I was like, okay. Maybe there's something here. And it was in 2018, I really said, okay, this is something I could see myself doing long-term. So I need to start laying the groundwork now. And so it was something I kind of just did off to the side on my own. nights and weekends. And that's the other thing entrepreneurs you got to remember. There's no such thing as a day off. There's no such thing as vacation. There's no such thing as weekends. Nights and weekends are gone. And so, I would allocate a lot of that time. And I think, you and I have talked about this before is about risk and being, there's a lot of people are scared to take that kind of risk, and, the time and the money and the potential loss to your family, from a financial standpoint, not to mention time, that's a big decision to make. And I think a lot of guys that have served, a lot of people that have served in the military have put themselves in situations where they get shot at. And so the idea of taking some risk on a business actually doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's actually a pretty good fit, huh? I think there's actually a pretty large presence of veterans who are either become entrepreneurs because they like the fast-paced environment, they like high risk, high reward.
Yep, totally agree.
Let me ask you this, because you have moved to more of an advisory role, or you're able to see investments into different businesses or help businesses grow, and you spent a lot of time in the energy and the oil and gas space. Uh, can you talk to me about building teams? And can you talk to me about maybe the one person in the middle? What is important when you go into a room and you meet with either a management team and you talk to a CEO or you talk to a leader of a business? What are some things that maybe you try to help that individual identify to make themselves either a better leader or their business improve?
I think the biggest look, entrepreneurs and founders, usually there's a decent ego that comes along with that. And you kind of have to have that, right? You got to have that level of confidence in order to take this level of risk. And what comes with that is I can do everything. And there's two really bad aspects to that mentality. One, you can't, and you don't have the time. You physically do not have the time. And if the company is dependent on just you, you're doomed for failure. And the other is, delegation. Your ability to delegate and surround yourself. The second thing is your gaps. Is knowing how to recognize what your gaps are and fill them. Who is the yin to your yang? Like, you are not. I always say that I am great on the operations side. Operations, logistics, management. On the people side. And then I always love partnering with somebody that has more of a strategic, big picture mentality, because we just play off each other extremely well. And so recognize what is the opposite side of the coin of you. Where are your gaps? Because you're going to have some. So I think number one, people need to recognize what their gaps are, and then surround themselves with people that help fill those gaps and can complement their skill sets. And then delegate. And be able to surround yourself with key leaders that you can delegate responsibility to, and let them do what they do best, and then have them report to you. It's the back brief. It's make sure the order is understood, clearly understood, and then let them report back. Make sure you're checking in. But as far as teams and that management team, what I look for is like, okay, who's at the top? Who's at the top, and how has he surrounded himself to compensate for his gaps? Because if he hasn't, I think that company's in store for a world of hurt.
Yeah. So because you have spent so much time, and maybe oil and gas is the family business as well. So you've been around it maybe passively, you've been around it actively, you've been around it as a business owner, as a business leader, and as an advisor. And something at kind of a macro level, I'm interested to kind of just discuss this with you about the energy future of the state of Texas and of the United States. And, I think everybody probably across the country knows the tragedy that happened here in Texas, where the cold weather came through. We lost a lot of power. The conversation, at least here in Texas, kind of became adversarial between renewable energies versus fossil fuel energies. I wanted to see if we could have a little bit, maybe more of a nuanced conversation, and sometimes maybe a more macro conversation about how you get those resources to, instead of being adversarial, how you get them to work together. And I was wondering if maybe you could just talk a little bit about what you're seeing from your level about how renewables and fossil fuels can work together to provide a future for the people of Texas and for the people of the country.
Yeah, Dan, very timely discussion coming off that winter storm, which we're still having, millions of people that are still suffering from this. And so hopefully we'll come up with some solutions and won't let this happen again. So yeah, our family's been in oil and gas for a little over 100 years, and I've been in it actively running an oil and gas investment firm. And I'm also on the renewable side, sitting as an investor and board member of a wind power company, advisor to a clean tech company. I see them both as working together, not as enemies. We saw, to your point, there was a lot of negativity around, well, the windmills froze, and well, guess what? The natural gas, the pumps that were pushing natural gas, they froze too. Why? Because we didn't invest in our infrastructure. And look, this is a 1 in 100-year type storm. I get why we did not invest in that infrastructure. Look, the cold parts of the country that have windmills, they invested in the technology that prevents freezing. Well, we didn't do that in Texas because we've never had this problem before. So we can learn from our mistakes and grow. But I definitely see how both of these two can work together. Wind doesn't blow all the time. Sun's not shining all the time. Things happen on the fossil fuel side that, so these things they can definitely complement each other. You don't know, whole saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. We don't have the battery technology today to store the energy coming off windmills and solar. I think the last study I read, the state of California, who's the most progressive when it comes to this and proactive, they have 1 minute of battery storage, 1 minute. And so this idea that we're going to get to 100%, zero emission net carbon net zero, that's, according to the professionals, you need 3 days of power. Well, we're at 1 minute. We got a long way to go. And so, but there are things that the oil industry specifically can do to be better, and we should be better. And this is why I advise this clean tech company that actually is trying to do that. We can be reducing our carbon footprint. That's what Synergy Fuels is doing, reducing the carbon footprint of well sites by 99%. We can get rid of flaring. I mean, that's easy. We have the technology, and we have technology that's less expensive and cleaner. So we need to adopt these principles, and we need to stop fighting this climate change revolution that we're going through and jump on board and say, okay, what can we do better? And so let's be better about fossil fuels. Let's be cleaner about, oil and natural gas. Natural gas is an easy bridge. And let's also be thoughtful around wind and solar and geothermal, so that we can actually continue to grow those technologies and let them be, another arrow in our quiver. And so that we can leverage all of these and have multiple sources of power. So yeah, I mean, it's clear that these things can be friends. So let's figure out a way to work together.
So is it true then, from somebody who is I guess more of a spectator and just kind of watching the impact of the growth, like you talked about, of batteries, and people are talking about Tesla, people are excited about this, right? I think casual observers, I think are excited about the future of clean energy. And I'm interested to know, what you're seeing. Is there excitement in that industry, and how much is technology really kind of the revolutionizing technology is allowing some of these renewable and green energies to actually come online faster than maybe we previously thought? Can you either confirm or deny that?
Absolutely. And there's also, this is the power of entrepreneurship and capitalism. People come up with these amazing ideas. We've got a company, I think it's fantastic. They're taking natural gas that is being flared in the Bakken, and they're routing it into natural gas generators that are powering computer systems that are mining Bitcoin. Okay, so they're taking waste heat, right? Something that's just being burned into our atmosphere, and they're actually converting it into energy and producing Bitcoin, which, by the way, not a bad investment for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, it's worked pretty well for them. And so, those are examples. I'm on the board of Hubbard Energy. I think they are changing the game when it comes to wind power. Like, what's one of the big problems with wind power? People are concerned about the environment. They're concerned about it killing birds. They're concerned about it, not being that efficient. It's about 59% efficient. They're concerned about the transmission. Okay, well, guess what? Some really cool engineers came up with an idea of putting a wind turbine that sits on the top of a roof of a commercial building. And as the wind hits the building, goes up and over and goes into this wind turbine, it captures I think 96% of the wind, and it puts it right into the building. So you get rid of the efficiency issue, you get rid of the transmission issue, you don't have the bird issue, and other environmental issues. And, so that technology is coming to the market right now. In fact, we're in the middle of a capital raise. And so, if you let entrepreneurs and capitalism work, we are going to continue to solve these problems and bring new things to the marketplace.
Well, that's the one thing. Maybe you can shed some light too on maybe the deals or the environment or the innovation that's happening there in Dallas, because I had a conversation with Samantha Snabes, and she's over at Re3D, and they're a 3D printing company. And she's kind of on cutting edge, technology of 3D printing, industrial 3D printing. And she just said the term that she used was, "I'm bullish on Texas." What does Texas look like from as you talk to energy industry, and what does it look like there in Dallas?
There's a giant migration going on right now that I'm sure everybody's heard about, where, Californians and New York, and there are a lot of people moving to Texas, corporations, Hewlett Packard, Oracle, Tesla. I mean, we've heard about, JP Morgan was already here. Whole Food, all these companies have been moving to Texas for a lot of good reasons. And, just to give you a data point, if I remember correctly, in this 2021 census, we're seeing that California is losing 3 congressional seats, New York's losing 2, and Texas is gaining 3, right? It's based off population. So that's just a data point of how many businesses and people are moving to this state, because it's very pro-business. It's very friendly from a personal income tax perspective, and no state income tax. So there's a lot of reasons why people are moving to Texas. Very entrepreneurial spirit. We're now seeing a ton of engineering, computer engineering flow into Austin. We're seeing a ton of financial institutions flow into Dallas, because the opportunities are bright here. And, there's a massive amount of momentum that's carrying us. And so, everywhere I turn, I'm seeing a new company want to come to Dallas, a new startup. And so I am incredibly bullish, to take the same phrase on where Texas is going, as I think we are one of the leaders. In fact, I had somebody tell me the other day that Dallas is the new Chicago. And
what did they mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, everything from the culture, as far as like the diversity of food and experiences that you can enjoy in Dallas, to the business opportunities, to the companies that are moving their headquarters here. Commercial real estate pre-COVID was on one of the biggest booms we've ever seen, of course, because corporations have been moving here. Now, COVID is obviously changing the game as far as where people work, but it has been crazy the number of cranes you will see in Dallas and Austin and Houston, as people have continued to move here. And our economy has become so diverse. Everybody's like, oh, Texas, it's only oil and gas. That is not true by any means. I mean, anything from tech, healthcare, education, commercial real estate. I mean, there's all these industries that have rounded out our economy that have made us incredibly strong.
Can I, one thing that I want to kind of pivot back to a second ago is if you grew up in the oil and gas industry, what gained your interest, or what brought you into considering renewables and to want to add that to your kind of portfolio of businesses?
Yeah, so a good quote my mentor gave me was, get in front of avalanches. Avalanches are things you cannot control. Aging population, cost of water, things of that nature.
Right.
And as I've been in oil and gas now for a decent amount of time. Look, there's a lot of negativity around oil and gas, and we've got a lot of work to do. And so I thought, okay, there are better ways to do this. What does that look like? And so that's why I wanted to have one foot in clean tech, and why I still remember where I came from. And because I'm still bullish. I'm still a big fan of the oil and gas industry. We just got to do better. And so, fintech and clean tech can bring a lot of additional capabilities to our industry, where we can see a lot of growth. And so I want to have a foot in both, but I do really think that this clean revolution, this ESG revolution that we've been seeing, is real. 36 billion in pipes and SPACs was raised in 2020 for ESG related technologies. And, that's real money. And so I think there's a great opportunity as an entrepreneur to get involved in this, and capture this opportunity. But at the same time, I don't see fossil fuels going away either. People forget that, this coffee cup right here is made with petroleum. All the buildings that the house that they're living in, the buildings that they're working in, those are all made with petroleum-based products. And so, unless we go to 3D printing for everything, with renewable, and hemp, I don't know how you get there. And so I am very excited about the new technologies that are coming to the forefront, and I want to be a part of that, and I want to support that. But at the same time, I don't think that our foundation, the things that we've been using to build this amazing economy that we enjoy, they're not going away, but they do need to work smarter, and they need to be cleaner.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm glad you kind of like reference the part of people coming to Texas and thinking that it's an oil and gas economy, because that is certainly, I think, a very solid foundation as energy demand grows, especially if you look at developing countries. One of the biggest line items is energy, to be able to heat and cool their homes and keep their people safe and keep hospitals running. It needs fossil fuel, so that certainly doesn't go away, right? But it's great to see, as you said, the new technologies, new innovations, and what people want to create in an entrepreneurial, capitalist society is they're bringing their ideas to Texas, and then they're meeting people like yourself, and they're making the ideas of the future happen here in places like Dallas and Houston, in Austin. And it's an incredible time, I think, to be a Texan and to be able to watch the flurry of excitement around business and being able to create a future, not just for Texans, but I think for people across the nation.
I totally agree. I think the future is bright. I think Texas is in a great position to lead by example. And frankly, I'm very grateful for the leaders that we have. Governor Abbott, tip of the spear, Commissioner George P. Bush, who I've known personally for many years, who I think has done an incredible job as land commissioner. And I have high hopes for him in higher office, because he is definitely a servant of this country and of this state. And so we've been very blessed with great leaders. Frankly, you've seen across the country what bad leadership can do to not just to cities, but to states. And so, I'm very grateful for the people that have led Texas to the success that we've seen.
Yeah, no, I certainly second that, and I feel fortunate to be here. And it's just fun to be a part of it and to be able to speak to veterans like yourself, who I know you're continuing your service in the reserves, but it's great to sit down and talk with people in the veterans and military community about what they're seeing in their industry, what they're seeing in their business, and just the opportunity to learn from you about your time in uniform and your time in business as well. And so I appreciate you dissecting a lot of different topics for us today. But as we close out, I just wanted to see if there was anything else that you would like to leave our audience with today. Is there maybe one thing that we didn't get to hit on that you would like to leave us with?
I think, and I touched on this briefly, but the idea of persistence and being humble. You're going to get told no a lot. Don't get discouraged. Keep your head up. Keep driving forward. Be humble. Be persistent, and that will carry you throughout your life. I always say, if General Mattis and General Petraeus can say that they're continuing to learn today, who the heck am I to say that I know it all, or that I'm never going to have a stumbling block? And so, be humble. Be persistent. And then I also live by, one of the quotes I actually have on my desktop is a quote that I learned from Navy SEAL Clint Bruce here in Dallas, founder of Carry the Load, that he loves to talk about. And it says, "The reward for excellence is no punishment. I am here to be elite." And so when you think about, as you strive to be a better professional, excellence isn't good enough. Strive to be elite and just continue to try to better yourself as a professional every single day.
That's great. Well, I think we're going to leave it there, Patrick. I appreciate you ending on that note. I think it's been a really insightful conversation. It's been uplifting, and it certainly makes me feel fortunate to be in Texas and to be able to learn from Marines like yourself who continue to lead and serve in their community.
You're very kind, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and our staff here at the Texas Veterans Land Board, we will see you back here next Monday. Have a good one.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.